Hey guys, tomorrow we're going to be taking our mid-unit 3 review. We've had 3 topics so far, which is linear characteristics, rate of change, and writing equations. So in preparation of the test tomorrow, we're going to go over all 3. You'll notice that this review has a we do column and an I do column. I will be going over the we do column and I'll leave the I do column for you guys to do. It is a Schoology assignment that's going to be taken as a grade. Okay, so let's look at problem number 1. So we're given a graph, and then it says 0, y-intercept, and slope. They want us to identify all 3 of these attributes. So 0, we haven't really used that word too much in class, but it's just another word for x-intercept. So you're going to look at the x-axis, find where it crosses. So this one crosses at the 2. That is the 0 of the graph. Now we're going to write this as a point. So be very careful. You always do the x value first. So it'd be 2, 0. Okay, now our y-intercept, a little bit more straightforward. So y, look at the y-axis. Where does it cross? It's crossing right here. So there's our y-intercept. And again, you have to make sure the order that you put your numbers. This time it's going to be 0, 3. Okay, last is slope. For slope, there is a formula that you're going to use every single time that you want to do slope, which is, I'm going to write it over here to the side. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That's slope, always, always. So the good thing about finding the intercepts first is I can just use those 2 points. Sure, there's more that I can choose from. So like right here is another good point. But if I already have these 2, let's not do more work than we need to. So I'm going to treat this as x1, y1, and the y-intercept as x2, y2. And let's just plug into this formula here. So m would equal, on the top, I need to subtract the y values. So that'll be 3 minus 0. And on the bottom, I need to subtract the x values. So 0 minus 2. And if you put this into the calculator, you should get negative 3 over 2. Okay, so that's all 3 of the attributes that they asked us to find. There's our slope, our y-intercept, and our x-intercept. Okay, so just a little bit of a warning for you guys. What I noticed in class is that we would get the numbers correctly most of the time for slope. It's just the sign. Remember that if it's going down, that's negative. So remember that silly video we watched of a slope dude? So if it's going down, that's nice negative. So just make sure that you have the correct sign. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one also has to do with attributes. So x-intercept, y-intercept, and slope. But now there's a story, and they want you to identify what each of these numbers represent. Okay, so this one says, Devin owes his parents money. He does weekly chores to earn back his money to pay them back. The graph models the relationship between Devin's debt, so the money, and the number of weeks he has completed his chores. So here's our graph. On the x-axis, that's the number of weeks. And on the y-axis, that's dollars. Okay, so we're going to start with, it says x-intercept. Okay, so when I look at my x-axis, it's here. It's crossing right there at the 8. So that's the point 8, 0. But I know that this point is x and then y. X is the number of weeks, and then y is the dollars. So I'm going to label it here just so that we can remember that. 8 is weeks. I'm going to put WKS. And then this one was dollars. So in 8 weeks, the amount of dollars that he still owes is going to be 0. So in other words, it takes him 8 weeks to finish paying his parents back. So that's what we're going to write here under X-Intercept. So first I'm going to write the point. So it was at 80, and it means it takes 8 weeks for Devin to finish paying his debt. Okay, now let's look for the y-intercept. So back to our graph. Here's our y-axis. So just going to follow it, and the line hits right here. That's the point, 0, -60. So again, I know that the first number is weeks, and the second number is dollars. So at 0 weeks, Devin has -$60. So if you have $-, that means you don't have money. You owe that much. And because it's been 0 weeks, they just now started counting. So this must be the starting point. Okay, so y-intercept was 0, -60. So I would say Devin's starting debt amount was $60. So notice that I didn't have to put the negative, even though that's a negative, because the word debt lets us know that it's going to be negative anyway. So for the intercepts, what it is here is that y-intercept is always going to be your starting amount. So it's where you start at. And x-intercept is going to be where you end. Okay, the last third thing that they wanted us to figure out was slope. And just like we did before, I'm going to use the 2 points that we already have. So I'm going to treat this as x1, y1 for the x-intercept, x2, y2 for the y-intercept. So I would have -60 minus 0 over 0 minus 8. Okay, so when I put this into the calculator, I get 15 over 2. And that's correct. But in this situation, it might be better to write it as a decimal. So if you do Control-Enter, you'll get 7.5. So this means, so it's a positive number. It means that Devin earns $7.50. That's the 7.5 every week that he does his chores. Okay. Okay, one more question with attributes. It says graph the linear function y equals -2/3 parentheses x plus 9 and then plus 4. So this one's a little different because we haven't looked at functions that are in this format. Usually what we want, so I'm going to write it right here, is we want it to look like this, y equals mx plus b. Because I know that m is slope and b is y-intercept. If I had it in that format, it'd be easier to identify. So that's what we're going to do. Let's try to make it look like that. So first things first is I need to get rid of those parentheses. And the way we do that is we get the number that's on the outside and we distribute it to both things that are on the inside. So now I have y equals -2 over 3x and then minus 6. This plus 4 is not in the parentheses, so I'm not going to multiply it. I'm just going to bring it down, so plus 4 at the end. Okay, and then we're going to combine those last two because they are like terms. So now I have y equals -2 over 3x minus 2. Now it's in the format that will really help me It's in y equals mx plus b. So now I can tell you for certain that the slope is negative 2/3 and the y-intercept, so I'm going to write b, is negative 2. So I'm going to put that on the graph. So I'm going to start with this. B is at negative 2. Let's put a dot right there on the y-axis. And then the slope is negative 2/3. So we're going to count down 2 and then across 3. There needs to be another point right here. So I'm going to label that so you guys can see. We went down 2 and then across 3. Once you have that, you just connect them as best as you can. It doesn't have to be super straight. I'm going to eyeball the other side. So something like that. So remember, on your test, it'll be easier because it'll have a picture of the graph. You won't have to draw it. But this is what you're going to look for when you're identifying a graph. Check to see if it has the correct y-intercept. So you're going to have to do this math. And then check to see if it has the correct slope. Again, you're going to have to do the math, but it's usually going to be that first number. Okay, the other topic that we need to cover is rate of change. Rate of change is a formula. I'm going to write it here just so that we can have it to reference. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we just got to find 2 points to help us out here. So I'm going to start at the very left of my graph. Looks like right here. Now, if you notice, the axis, they're kind of going weird. They're going by 12s is what it looks like. So this point is at 0, 84. Okay, now we just got to find another point. So from there, I'm just going to follow the line until it goes through the corner, which right here looks like a good point. So make sure you read your graph correctly. That's going to be at 5, 96. Okay, now that I have 2 points, we can say x1, y1, x2, y2, and plug these in. So on top, the y's go there, so that'll be 96 minus 84 over, on the bottom, that's where the x's go, so 5 minus 0. Okay, so what I get here is 12 over 5. So this is the correct rate of change. It is the correct slope. But we're going to write it in terms of decimal because if you read the story, it's talking about a heat wave and the temperature is going to go up. So it's hard to say, oh, it's going to go up by 12 over 5 degrees. You want that as a decimal. So if you press Control Enter on your calculator, it should change it for you. And this is 2.4. So we would say the temperature, I'm just going to put temp, increases by 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit. So always do the y's. Since y is on top, you do y first when you're writing it. So degrees Fahrenheit per hour. So like I said, just writing the fraction would be good enough. Okay, so now the next one, it's going to be another rate of change problem, but this time it's going to be from a table. I know there's no labels, but we always know that the left side is x and the right side is y. So same formula from above. We're going to be doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to use the first 2 points. So x1, x2, y1, y2. We're going to plug it into the formula. So y's need to go on the top, so that's these two numbers here. 177.5 minus 71 over, then I got to do the x's, 5 over 2. Okay, this is another one where I type it in and it's giving me a fraction, 71 over 2, which is correct. It's just in terms of this problem. So laps and time makes me think of swimming. So your swimming laps, they're timing you. It's hard to say, oh, it took him 71/2 seconds. It's better to use this as a decimal. So this is actually 35.5. So this person swims, I'm just going to put he. Or it takes him 35.5 seconds per lap. Okay, and then last topic is writing linear equations. And just like we did before, we're going to try one from a graph and one from a table. There's two things we need to find. I'm going to highlight them. We need to find M and B. So M stands for slope, and B is the y-intercept. So I'm going to start by looking at my y-axis, see where it's crossing. It's crossing here at -6. So that's already going to be our B value. Okay, now we need to find slope. So starting from this point, I'm just going to move up until it hits the corner again. So it looks like right here. And make sure you're reading your graph correctly because they're not always just counting by ones. This is going to be at 4, 3. So if I use, this is x1, y1, and my new point is x2, y2, I can do the slope formula, which would be 3 minus -6 over 4 minus 0. And this gives us 9 over 4. So in this case, because it's a graph and it's not a story or anything, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as a fraction. So this is M. Now that I have M and B, I could just put them in those two spots that I have highlighted. So I'm going to use different colors just so that we can see. So y equals, but instead of M, I'm going to put in that 9 over 4. Okay, then x plus b, but because b is negative, we're going to just put -6. And that's our answer for this one. Okay, one more. Okay, so this last one is a table, but we're going to be doing the exact same thing here. Y equals mx plus b. So I need to find slope, and I need to find y-intercept. So slope, you can pick any 2 points you want. I don't want to have to deal with these negatives up here, so I'm actually going to pick the last two. But whatever makes you feel most comfortable. So x1, y1, x2, y2. So for slope, I would have 27 minus 24 divided by 5 minus 4. And that just gives me, it's a whole number, so it gives me 3. Cool, so I have M. So M is taken care of. But now I need to find B. So B is y-intercept. Anytime you're looking for an intercept on a table, you're looking for zeros. So I see it there twice. So you have to be very careful which one actually represents the y-intercept. If I want the y-intercept, I need there to be a number there, which means that x has to be 0. So I'm going to highlight It's this one right here. That's the one we want. That's B. Okay, so now that I have M and B, we're just going to put it together. I have Y equals 3x plus 12. And that's the equation that goes with that table. Okay, guys, now it's your turn. Go ahead and try the right column, so all the even numbers. There is an assignment on Schoology that has 5 attempts. That way you can check to see if you are doing this correctly. Remember, we have our test over this stuff tomorrow, and let me know if you have any questions.